Cool. So a little bit about me. My name is Scott. It's nice to meet everyone here. I'm sure some of you learned of the event through my LinkedIn profile. I have been in the tech industry for about 15 years, but I like to say more than that. In grade 8, I made my first kind of simple HTML about me page, studied at technical high school, and kind of went the route of computer programming in grade 11, 12. That led me to obtaining a college diploma in computer programming and systems analysis. And then after that, I went to do IT consulting for about 10 years. And then most recently worked at a company called Seven Shifts, working on SaaS, software as a service, within the restaurant industry. So I'm going to drop my LinkedIn profile in the chat. And I'm also going to drop a link to a little Slack community I run called TransitionToTech. Apart from my kind of tech journey, I also do a bit of coaching and IT mentorship. So that community is really to help people who are changing careers, transitioning careers, learn a little bit more about tech, and ask questions about tech, and just be involved in the industry from a perspective of helping each other learn and grow. So if you'd like to join that community, feel free. But in today's little chat, what I'd like to do is, if anyone is comfortable, you can put your LinkedIn profile link in the chat. And then if you want to come on cam for a bit, I'll call you up one by one. And you can just give a little introduction to yourself and what interests you about tech, etc. I found that sometimes pushing out of our comfort zone is a good way to experience new things and find new opportunity. After that, I'm going to go through a little bit of tech and sort of the disciplines involved in some of these tech jobs. I will approach it from more of a technical side, although there are non-technical jobs within tech, like HR departments, sales, etc. Those also exist. And then we'll chat about just some roles, because oftentimes when I'm talking to people, I get this notion of we don't know what we don't know. So in terms of tech as an industry, I think a lot of people find it attractive. I mean, it does allow for remote work in some places. The salary can be pretty good. And there's a lot of pros within the tech industry. So I've been working with a lot of teachers who are trying to transition, a lot of people who are transitioning from, like manufacturing jobs, et cetera, and moving into the tech industry, whether that's in the non-technical roles or the technical roles. So I'll touch a little bit on the various roles. After that, we'll just kind of open it up to some Q&A. And if there are any questions about the industry in general, or any pressing questions, we'll kind of go through that. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I'd love to hear a little bit about each of you as well. So I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, but Yassine, and please correct me if I did not pronounce it correctly.
Yep, no, that's perfect. I'm Yassine. I'm a recent bootcamp grad. Prior to this, I was studying philosophy, looking to get into grad school for my PhD. And with the pandemic, I had a bit of a shift in how I viewed academia. And I had a background in as an AV tech technician and manager back at college, and I really enjoy working with tech. And so I figured I should kind of pivot into that role of working with tech, but I didn't want to be working on hardware and be working at live events. So I figured, let me see if I can be a bit earlier in the pipeline. And
Cool.
Software engineering was always something that I thought was kind of like an impossible thing, like only for like really smart people. So I got in touch with some friends who actually I graduated college with, and they actually attended a boot camp as well. And seeing that they were able to make the transition, I said, you know what, let me give it a shot. Took some free courses, figured, you know what, I actually really enjoy this. And I decided to take the full dive. And so now I'm about, I'd say, 8 to 10 months into my journey, depending upon like if I do it from the moment I like first got interested to when I actually joined bootcamp. And so far I've loved every moment of it. The headbanging on the keyboard, the bugs and whatnot, the re-rendering on React. So it's been a fun journey. It's been empowering. Job search has been frustrating, but whenever I get frustrating, I always just go back and code a little bit, and it's a always nice.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And you dropped your LinkedIn in the chat there, so if everybody can visit that and connect. Could you share the boot camp that you attended and a little bit about your boot camp experience? And we'll touch on boot camp versus kind of formal education a little bit later as well, because I think that's something that comes up pretty often. But what's your experience been like, and what boot camp were you attending?
Yeah, so I attended the Thinkful boot camp. I think prior to, I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago, it was Block.io, I think was the name of the boot camp. And then Check bought them, and they kind of decided to be a bit larger of a program. And I definitely recommend it. It was very vast in terms of what it covered. We covered our main stack was like a Perl, a Postgres, Express, React, and Nodes kind of situation.
Okay.
And the instructors are great, the tutors are great. My mentor still stays in touch with me, and I definitely recommend it. And even if you don't choose Thinkful, I think any boot camp, like if you're thinking about making that transition and going back to a 4-year college isn't kind of the path that you want to take or can take, I definitely recommend it in terms of my experience. And I did enjoy having the chance as somebody who I did want to get my PhD and be a professor and teach. I did have the opportunity to do that with my cohort members. Not that I came into it with as much knowledge as them. I just happened to have a bit more free time that allowed me to get a bit on lessons, and it allowed me the opportunity to learn on my own, but then also learn through helping others through solutions. Because oftentimes, like I would learn more by like trying to solve somebody else's code than my own.
Cool. No, I appreciate the introduction, and I think you touched on a few good points there that I just want to reflect back to. You said, the boot camp's a good route if you don't have those 4 years for college. And I know sometimes within the industry, there's this formal education versus boot camp kind of mindset. But as far as I'm concerned, I think it's not feasible for everybody to go and do 2, 3, 4 years and put their entire life on pause to attend school full time. People have kids and partners, and sometimes that's just not possible. So the boot camp is a way to, I know some boot camp grads who they have full-time jobs, and after their full-time jobs, a few days a week, they're going in and hammering out these projects. So yeah, that kind of route, formal versus boot camp, I think there's pros and cons in each, but yeah, it's cool to hear about your experience. So thanks for that. Cool. Andrew, did you want to toss your LinkedIn profile in the chat and come up and say hi? Or if you're not comfortable, that's okay too. You could just put a not comfortable in chat.
No, not particularly, but I will because I'm getting called out here. My girlfriend's poking me and going, do it, do it, do it. How are you, Scott?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. I can drop I'll drop my LinkedIn there in just a minute. I am self-taught. I have been doing courses on Udemy and learning along the way. I briefly looked at boot camps, but this all kind of started for me as a personal hobby kind of thing. And as I got into it, I started doing more and more. So it wasn't something I was looking to do a career hop. But once I got into it, I really started to enjoy it. And then we really started to go hard on it, learning JavaScript. I started with Python. And now through JavaScript, React, Node, Express, Mongo, SQL. I've been working on GraphQL. I mean, I recognize some names in here. I'm sure you've seen my constant stream of posts and rambling about what I'm doing. But yeah, it's been really good. I've actually spoken to a lot of people recently about the bootcamp route, both positive and negative, and quite a few people I find are reaching out to me recently with I really like all the things you're posting. And so now they're asking me for advice. I'm like, listen, I don't even have a job doing this yet.
Yeah.
But, always happy to talk to people. So there's always something going on. I had somebody today reach out and they're like, oh, I'm going to be starting at this boot camp, but I don't know if it's a good idea. Like, you're self-taught, give me the whole story. And I'm like, well, I mean, it works if you are super disciplined about it. Other than that, it's really easy to fall off the wagon.
Yeah. I mean, welcome. Thanks for jumping on and sharing. And I think similar to Yassine here, going with that the self-taught route or the bootcamp route, it can be difficult. And you mentioned discipline, and I'm not one of those people who tries to sow like false hope. I do think the bootcamp path is a little more difficult, and it does require a lot of dedication, a lot of commitment, and a lot of discipline. But anyone going down that route, I want to prepare them for that and ensure that they know that it's going to take work. It's going to take that dedication, especially being self-taught. No one's going to tell you, hey, sit down and study for an hour. So, I've heard things like blocking time off in the calendar and actually having a scheduled, consistent time to study and to work on the skills. But the notion where you said like, hey, I don't even have a job in this stuff, but the fact that you're doing it, I really feel like everybody can be an expert to someone else. You're a little further on the path than somebody who is starting a bootcamp, or somebody who wants to start being self-taught and wants to start going into those things. So I think that's important too. And I think even, if people here follow me on my LinkedIn, sometimes I just ask the question like, hey, what would you guys use to build this sort of thing? Because sometimes I don't know either. Sometimes it's like, there are smarter people out there than me, and there are people that can benefit from my help too. So I think having that mindset of, hey, I can help people, and at the same time learning as I go along, I think that's pretty important. I think it helps build up like a sense of community, sense of networking, and really it only takes one connection to get your next job. So I think that's really important. So
definitely. And yeah, I mean, you just have to be a little bit further ahead of somebody to help them out. And so I've really tried to embrace that. And like I say, lots of people on LinkedIn are like, or a lot of people, especially seniors, are like, how are you doing all this? Like just posting all these things. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, other people seem to like it and it's helpful. So why not?
Yeah, I try to come with that mentality too, where some of my stuff too is pretty basic programming stuff. But a lot of people benefit from it because I try to explain it from like a non-technical angle, because I think sometimes that can be overwhelming, is trying to learn all the jargon, trying to learn all the different technologies or names of them and what exactly they do. I think that can be daunting coming in. Cool. So next up, Kia, I'm just going to go down the participant list as well, but Kiana, did you want to say hi and chat a bit about what you're working on and why tech and why you're interested in the industry in general?
So I won't be able to turn my camera on, but absolutely.
Sure.
Tech was something that I didn't think I can get into because I thought it was like really, really techy. But I'm a project manager. I went through the actual traditional school route. So I got my bachelor's in business IT management, became a project manager. But I am now, I now see myself gravitating more towards Python than anything else. So now
Gotcha.
I'm just in the process of like learning Python and like getting it together. So that's where I'm at.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. Python's definitely a language that has been making a bit of rounds in the industry lately. And as somebody who just finished job searching and just I just got a new position recently, Python came up on, I would say, a good 90% of job postings I was looking at. So there's definitely a trend towards it. It's used a lot in the data aspect of tech. And because of that, it has it has grown in popularity over the last 5 years or so. So yeah, nice to have you, and nice to meet you as well. Feel free to throw your link, your LinkedIn in the chat if you haven't already.
And thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So I think Sarah and Ryan. Sarah, did you want to go next?
Sure, that's fine with me. Yes, I'm Sarah. Originally, my background is culinary and pastry. I decided that when I was in middle school, so I'm very much obsessed about food. Went to college for it, worked in restaurants and country clubs, but then my little bitty body couldn't take it anymore. And during the pandemic, I was taking like all the free opportunity, like resources to do all these different courses. And somehow I kept getting kind of further back into like technical side, because I did a little bit of the coding, a little bit of like trying to figure out cybersecurity because it seems so interesting to me. But since I am quite obsessive about food and restaurants, I learned, I should say I'm learning more about restaurant technologies.
Cool.
And for me, like the best way to support that is through customer success. So that's what I'm trying to get into. And I've officially been doing it for about 5 months.
Awesome. Cool. Customer success. Yeah, no, thank you for being here. Thanks for having a chat, and thanks for introducing yourself as well.
Well, thank you.
Cool. What was that? Sorry.
I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for coming. Awesome. Okay, and then Ryan, I think you're the last one. Do you want to just say hi and a little bit about you and your tech journey, where that's at?
Yeah. So I started out last year or 2 years ago now, during the pandemic. I went through a online coding boot camp called Lambda School. I just decided to go through that because I wanted to elevate myself in the tech industry, because I was a desktop / mobile support mobile support technician. So after I graduated last year, I had a rough time trying to find a job. And then I actually just recently got a software solutions engineer role at a Dynatrace, and I started yesterday.
Cool.
So yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that's exciting. I know the job search and that journey can be extremely difficult. I mean, being somebody who just finished doing theirs, it's a stressful time. And so congratulations on that. And thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Cool. I think that was everybody. Did I miss anybody? If so, just speak up in chat, but I think that was everybody. Okay, cool. Yeah, so everybody feel free to connect with each other on LinkedIn. You hear what everyone's doing, and I really do believe in sort of helping each other and growing together. I think that's the best way to job search. It's the best way to connect with people and building these relationships. You know, sometimes there's not this immediate payoff. Sometimes it's just like, hey, let's build a relationship and let's get to know each other. And then maybe a year down the road, someone goes, hey, we just got a position open here, and I know you were doing this, so you want to come interview? And I think that's sometimes the best way to get your foot in the door, and the best way to like grow our careers is, you know, there's that saying that it's who you know, and I really think that's true. As good as some people are at what they do, sometimes knowing the right people and having those connections can make a whole world of difference when it comes to opportunity. So we're going to go in a little bit about tech disciplines and sort of the way I see them and what we see in the tech industry in general. I generally divide this into a few areas. We have the notion of data, and these are things like databases and storage and things like spreadsheets. Believe it or not, Excel spreadsheets and CSV files are still used in the industry for doing things like exporting data, importing, etc. Then we have different databases, which is a little more powerful and generally has some powerful language behind it that can help with querying data, pulling reports, joining a bunch of data, and that aspect of the web. When we talk about data and databases, I'll throw some kind of technologies out here, but some that you might hear in the industry are SQL databases, which stands for Structured Query Language. Structured Query Language is a very popular data language, and it's used to work with a lot of various SQL databases. It's sort of a standard data language. And in learning that opens a lot of possibilities in terms of working with things like MySQL databases, SQL Server, which was a Microsoft offering, Oracle database, and there are various other SQL variants like MariaDB, etc. So just to give you an idea, Facebook's backend at some point, I don't know if it still is, but I know at some point, I think it was MySQL or a MySQL variant. So data is generally where things are stored. So if you think about logging into Facebook or logging into LinkedIn or when you load up, how does the website know who you're connected to, etc. That's all generally stored or housed in a database. So data is one section of tech, and there are a lot of various roles within that section. Database developers, database engineers. You might hear the word developer, engineer, programmer used interchangeably in the industry. But there are various data and database roles. So some of those are data analysts, things like that. Another section of tech is the whole notion of web. So websites, essentially. And there are various types of websites, but there's those you open in a browser, and that's a website. But there's also, if you open your mobile device and you click the Chrome icon and you go to a website, generally those websites have various style sheets or various things they employ to sort of transform it into a more mobile friendly layout. But all in all, they're built similarly with HTML, CSS, and other technologies in that space. Then we get into mobile, and that is actually developing native apps. We call them native applications for the particular phone. So these are things like if you go into the Play Store on an Android and you go install an app, that's considered a native mobile app. If you go into the iOS store and you install an app, that is considered a separate discipline because it does require particular technologies, particular language, etc. So that's the aspect of data and web. And then we talk about design as well as another discipline. If you're interested in the way things look and feel and what the user experience might be like, there are also design roles out there. And this is less of the coding, less of the programming. You might be using tools like Canva. And a lot of times designers work hand in hand with various web developers or mobile developers in order to produce layouts. So a designer might produce a layout and say, here, this is what we want the site to look like. In smaller companies, what you'll find is you'll find a lot of people kind of work across these disciplines. So you might have somebody responsible for database creation, website development, creating a mobile app as well, and then some of the design aspects. As you go into bigger and bigger companies, they tend to specialize these roles. So in a smaller company, as I said, you might be doing database development, web development, you might be doing a bit of design, you might be doing a bit of mobile development. But as companies get bigger, they have specific roles. So for example, mobile developer, in which you'd be creating iOS or Android apps. They might have specific developers for iOS and specific developers for Android. They might have somebody whose sole role it is to design for various teams. They might have web developers, a team of web developers and a team of mobile developers. They might have a team of a database team. So that's one thing when looking at the tech industry and looking at the roles in it, trying to narrow in on what aspect you want to work in, know about, learn about, can be beneficial. At smaller companies, you're going to probably work as a generalist. You're going to get to taste and touch a little bit of these different areas. You're going to get to learn a lot about them. And based on that, you might find like, hey, I really like mobile development and I don't want to do web development. Or, hey, I really like databases and querying and pulling reports and data analysis, and I don't really care for web or design or mobile development. So these are a bit of some of the more technical roles, and these are what I would consider individual contributors. They're writing code, they're coming up with designs, they're creating databases, they're pulling information and working with the database at large as well. Within web, so I'm going to drill in on web a bit, because within web, there tend to be in bigger companies two distinctions, and that is backend developers versus front-end developers. Backend developers would be those who are working with the behind the scenes code. So essentially the stuff that makes the website work. So if you're going to log into Facebook and you click the button, the behind the scenes code takes your username and password. It goes and looks those up in databases. It tries to write some logic. For example, if the passwords match, if they don't match, send an error back, etc. So that notion of kind of taking the user requests, processing them, and doing something with them, and then returning a response, that's considered backend. So front end is what you're seeing when you access a website. So if you go to LinkedIn, you see the wall and you see the search box up top and various buttons, and then you have messaging in the bottom right. And when it comes to how those are laid out, how those are coded, for example, let's say you click the messaging box and you want it to animate and slide up, that is considered front end development. And those are two very different disciplines. In a lot of smaller companies, what they have is they have roles called full stack developers. And what a full stack developer does is they work across the entire tech stack. So they might, I talked about the generalist. A full stack developer will generally do some work on the database, do some work on a front end to create a form and put the text boxes, etc. And then when you click the button, that full stack developer might also be writing some of that back end code. So if you're interested in all these little areas and you want to be more of a generalist and you want to be able to create websites, let's say from scratch, full stack will allow you to kind of experiment and touch on all these various areas. So apart from these sort of contributor roles, there are a lot of support roles that surround them as well. So in bigger companies, they tend to have various teams for things like testing. So for example, some developers might write some code, do a little bit of testing, but then pass it off to a QA analyst, QA engineer, etc. They might have different titles, but QA is quality assurance. And generally in software development, what will happen is programmers or coders will code something up and have a front end, etc. And then when things are about ready to go to the live systems or ready to be used by the world, they would send it over to a QA analyst, and that QA analyst could go through testing and say, hey, this broke, this didn't work, etc. So when it comes to that particular role and other support roles, some of these roles tend to be pretty good entry points to the tech industry because they don't require as high technical knowledge. But I have seen people become a QA analyst, work in QA, learn a lot about the product, learn a little bit about coding, and then actually move into, let's say, a coding role or a developer role, or even like a mobile developer role or a data role, etc. Other support roles can vary. Sometimes teams will have a data analyst, which is somebody responsible for pulling reports, analyzing the data, and supporting the team and management in making business decisions. And as I said before, when you get into bigger and bigger companies, the more and more they specialize these roles. So those are kind of the individual contributors and some of the support roles surrounding them. And then you also have your management layers. So within the management layers, a lot of bigger companies work with what's called cross-functional teams. So these cross-functional teams might include, depending on how big the company is, but I'll just give you an example, 3 to 5 developers, maybe 1 or 2 senior developers who generally have a bit more experience. It might include a data analyst, and then it might include a project manager. In bigger companies, they might actually have a few managers per team. Some companies will split management into engineering manager and project manager, where engineering manager can be responsible for the engineering aspect, the software aspect, the development aspect, and they oversee the technical side of things a little more, whereas project manager tends to oversee management of the project, and they are a little more client facing. So when it comes to some of the technical roles and some of the kind of, I don't want to say lower on the rung, but that's kind of the base of the tree when it comes to, or the base of the ladder when it comes to some of these tech companies. So you have your devs, your designers, your database devs, mobile devs, etc. And then above that, you could have some management layers. So engineering managers, project managers. Above that, you could have, let's say, leads. So sometimes in these companies, various project managers will report to a lead project manager. And then there are various non-technical teams as well to support the business. So when it comes to things like QA, you might have a team of 3 or 4 devs or 3 or 4 people who is responsible for a lot of the testing, a lot of the quality assurance. You might have teams of researchers working directly with clients in order to gather requirements and help project managers translate those and prioritize those. You might have various directors like director of engineering, director of finance, etc. So as far as tech goes, when you start getting into that management layer and some of these support teams, it can be very similar to other industries. You have sales teams, you have business dev representatives, you have customer sales like CSMs, and those teams basically help support the product. So how are those teams different in tech versus not in tech? I think what happens with sales reps and BDRs and CSMs is, I think this is similar in other industries, but they need to know a lot about the product. So, if you think, let's go vacuum salesman. If you're trying to sell a vacuum, knowing a lot about that vacuum can help you make those sales, can help you support the vacuum, can help you support customers as well. When it comes to doing these roles within the tech industry, knowing a lot about the software, how it works, how it operates, that will help as well. Oftentimes, some of these like customer success managers or anyone who's customer facing, even some of these technical support teams, they'll be talking to a customer, they'll be taking that information, writing it down, and then they could be talking to project managers. Project managers might say, hey, go talk to the team about this, and then they might be interfacing with devs internally as well. So when it comes to supporting customers within tech, knowledge of the software, knowledge of the product is extremely useful. So that's a little bit about an overview, and there's a lot there, but I really wanted this to be an intro, and I wanted it to work as a way to just give people something to think about. So I think kind of the takeaways here are the notion of there being these various divisions. So the notion of working with data, the notion of building websites and programming, the notion of mobile, the notion of design, and then some of those other layers, quality assurance testing, management layers, sales, BDRs, CSMs, etc. Tech is not limited to these roles. If I had to talk about all the roles in tech, it would take forever. But when we think about some of these things, I mentioned web and mobile, there are some programmers and coders that work on things like embedded systems. They might be working on software for something that might go in a new age vehicle, the computer systems controlling some of the newer cars. They might be working on, for example, some of the software that's running smart home thermostats and light switches, etc. And this is the notion of Internet of Things, basically things that are connected to a wireless network and can be controlled with the phone or the internet at large, etc. So that's a bit of an overview. And I was just curious whether there were any questions regarding that. I don't know if all that was clear. I know there's a lot there, but it really is a pretty big industry. And there's a lot of various roles that can be that are involved. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in chat or feel free to jump on mic and just ask. But I know some of you here had mentioned in your little intros that you were kind of going the coding route. Some of you had mentioned, I believe, being in CSM or customer service. So when it comes to tech and those roles, are there any particular questions you would like answered? I'll just give everyone a few minutes. If you want to throw anything in chat, feel free. Cool. So perhaps I did a good job of explaining that, or perhaps everyone is shy. But regardless, I'll talk a bit about my experience in tech, and I'll talk a little bit more about the job search and how I approach that. And maybe that might give some insights as well. I think tech as an industry, there's a lot you can do. And there's a lot of crossover. People tend to think of tech, from what I've seen, people tend to think of tech as this strange creature that, they're unsure what it's like and what you can do and things like that. And what industry, like, is tech an industry in itself, or technology is rampant in our society. I mean, it's everywhere, from our pockets to the things in our house, to stepping outside and having things like traffic lights that change on timers, and central control boards, etc. So what I have found in tech is every company needs it. Every company probably has a website or some reporting aspects, or there's some aspect of their business that is technical in nature. So if you're interested in education, you put the word ed in front of tech, you have Edtech. So these are things like learning software and mobile apps for learning, and ways for teachers to facilitate the classroom. I interviewed with a company where they had software that allowed parents to sign up for it and schools to sign up for it. And teachers could take pictures of the kids during the day to show the activities. And teachers could have lesson plans for the various kids and individualized little notes there. And then when they go to a different classroom, that teacher has access to all those notes. So as a way to facilitate education, there are things like fintech, financial tech, which could be things like accounting software, or applications like Mint, in order to consolidate various bank accounts and accounts into one place for reporting and a better vision of your spending. There are various aspects. If you're really interested in sports, I mean, there are companies there like the Score and TSN, etc., and they're using a lot of tech to power their reporting and their stats and their stuff as well. And I guess my point there is, if you can find something you're really passionate about and marry that to tech, I think that shows when it comes to job searches. When you're searching for jobs, if you're really passionate about the gaming industry, or you're really passionate about, so even for the gaming industry, for example, which I'm passionate about, people tend to think of that of like, I'm a game developer. But even within the game industry, there are various sites and software offerings that do things like organize tournaments, and there are websites you can sign up for, and you can organize tournaments and do stats reporting, etc. So when it comes to the job search, I think one approach I generally like to take is find what you're passionate about. And if you're passionate about tech and you're passionate about this other thing, if you can find a way to smash them together, I think when job searching, that really shows. When it comes to interviews, you're excited to talk about this stuff. I mean, I could go on and on about video gaming and gaming in general. So that's one little job search tip. Another one too is the notion of networking. I mean, the fact that you're all here in this little networking event, I think the value of that. But really having these conversations and talking to people in the industry, if you want to get into development, and having these conversations. I think sometimes tech and technical people are seen as possibly scary individuals, but from my experience, they're extremely helpful. If you're looking at particular companies and you're interested in them, connect with some of the people at those companies. If you go to the LinkedIn job search and you go to people, it will show you people at the company, and you can send a connection request with a personalized invite saying, hey, I was looking at applying to your company, and I just wanted to hear a little bit about your life and what it's like at the company, etc. Or even the notion of, hey, I saw you're a programmer. Would you be open to having a coffee? Maybe I could send you a Starbucks gift card. A lot of people say, don't even worry about the gift card. Yeah, I'll give you some of my time. And that's a good opportunity to have a one-on-one, to ask questions, to learn about the industry, to learn about what you would be doing, to learn about the various roles. And for the most part, people are extremely helpful. The other thing I'd say is, when it comes to breaking into the industry as well, a lot of people I've seen have this very unfocused approach. They don't know the roles in tech. They don't quite know where they'll fit. They say, well, I can do anything. And I believe them. they can do anything, but sometimes they're not sure what it is they actually want to do. So taking some time to have that vision and think about these various roles and researching the roles in tech, I think that can help really narrow the job search. I've seen people use kind of the easy apply to 100 different companies. And I've done that too in moments, but when I see these companies that marry my passions and I'm very interested in, I will research them pretty thoroughly. I will talk to people at the organization. I will reach out to some of the managers there and say, hey, this is what I've been doing. I'm extremely interested in this. Would you have a coffee chat with me? And that can just make a connection. Even if they can't get you a job, having that connection, maybe 4 months down the line, you get a message saying, hey, I remember we had a chat. Like, we have this position open up. Are you interested? And I've had that happen to me personally. So I know that works. Is just out of curiosity, is anyone here currently looking for a position?
Yes.
Gotcha. You're looking for a position as a developer,
Yeah, as a dev.
Gotcha. Cool.
Sure.
Yeah. So what are on the hunt, Andrew as well, looking for first dev role. So because you're currently looking at position, I want to put you on the spot if that's okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
What has your job search been like, and what challenges are you facing?
So when I first started, I was kind of in the more scattered approach of like, whenever I see an entry-level job, I'm applying to it, going for like 50 a week or more, like just trying to get.
Are you applying to entry-level jobs that require 4 years of experience?
All of them.
Yeah, I think that's backwards, but
it became quite apparent very quickly that wasn't going to work. And I stayed at it even though I knew it wasn't kind of the most optimal route, because I was seeing some of my bootcamp like cohort members like get jobs that way. So I was like, you know what, let me keep trying. And I'd say about a month ago, I decided to make the shift. And you know what, let me, instead of spending so much time applying, let me spend about like 70% time networking, reaching out to people, having phone calls, getting advice, hopefully a referral, and then kind of going from there. Because I was kind of in like a weird point of when I kept applying where I thought maybe I'm not qualified as a dev. And it was kind of a weird spot because I was confident in my coding skills prior to that. And since then, it's been nice to know since I've spoken to people. No, I have what it takes. It's just a matter of just getting that first entry level position.
Yeah, I think that notion is something I deal with a lot too in my coaching. Like when I do one-on-one calls, I mean, there's even a name for it, like imposter syndrome. Is Can I do this? Am I an imposter? Do I believe in myself? And honestly, I don't think that goes away. I think that's a hallmark of people who are who care. They're people who examine, can I do this? Am I on the right path here? What do I need to learn? How do I need to get better? And I think that's actually, it sounds counterintuitive, but I think that's helpful. And I don't know if this brings any sort of comfort, but like I mentioned, I was on a job search for the last 2 months, and I have 15 years in the industry, and I'm sitting here going, can I code? I've built things from scratch, and I've worked on such cool projects, and I'm sitting here going, am I good enough? I think that's more so sometimes it comes from confidence or lack of it. And it can come from that notion of, well, I'm not getting the results as fast as I want them, so maybe I'm not good enough. But from my experience, the HR process takes anywhere from like 2 to 6 weeks. So I would say and I've seen some people too, they apply. They're so excited about 1 or 2 companies. They apply to 1 or 2 companies. They go through a 3-week process, stop applying everywhere else, get rejected, and then go, well, I'm back to square one. So for me, my thought process is keep your foot on the gas, just keep applying, keep networking, keep talking to people, and not from the notion of, hey, can you get me a job, or hey, can you make a referral, but from the notion of, I want to know about what you do. People love to talk about themselves. I want to know what you do. I'm curious. I think saying I'm curious or I'm trying to learn more, people will go, oh, okay, because that's valued. Curiosity and wanting to learn is valued. if you come to somebody and say, hey, can you refer me to a job, and you've talked to them once, I think that can kind of be a detriment. So the way I like to think of it is, if you were really good at something, or you were good at something and you were doing that job, and someone was interested in your job and what you do, how would you want them to approach you? And what would be okay for them to say or do, etc.? Because for me personally, if anyone goes, hey, how you doing? I saw you're a programmer, and I was just really curious. I'm interested, and I just wanted to chat. Would you have like 15 minutes? Some people are going to say, no, sorry. And it stings sometimes, but there are a lot of people out there that'll go, yeah, sure. Here's a Zoom link, jump on a call. So I think that's one of the biggest things, that notion of networking, and the confidence too. Like I'll ask you a question if you're cool with that. So if I came in to interview with you and I have that notion of, oh, I don't really believe in myself, would you hire me?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, see, because I think it sows doubt. Where it's like, if this person doesn't believe in themselves, then, sometimes people say, well, take a chance. And I really try to change people's mindset when it comes to that. Like, you're not a chance. If you're putting in the work, if you can make websites, if you can make sales calls, not all at once, because those are all different positions. But what I'm saying is, if you've ever sold something, you can break into a sales role. If you've ever made a little website, as crappy as it might be, whatever it is, you've made one. So I think what a lot of bootcamp grads do, or some of them that I've seen, or what they fail to do, is they don't showcase their work. Their LinkedIn profile, you go to it, there's no features section with the different projects that work. Some do, some have the portfolio, and those are the people I feel that get a job. But showcase your work. Doesn't matter how crappy it is. Because what happens is, you showcase your work, some people will see it, you start to learn a bit more, you start to make things that are a little better. You start to have conversations. You could even say, hey, I made this little website, give me some feedback. And you start to learn more, you start to get better, you start to work on more projects. And then you can always take some of those, quote unquote, crappier ones off and showcase some of the stuff that you've been advancing with. So I think like those are some just insights. I mean, take it for what you will. I'm not saying this is the best way, but those are things that I have seen impress. And just for a bit of background as well, in some of my companies, I have been involved in the hiring process. So I have been in technical interviews, I have been in some of that. And that is, those are things that stand out when you're looking at a LinkedIn profile, when you're looking at a resume and you see a GitHub link or a link to like, hey, here's my website, here's my portfolio. So just a bit of insight there. Cool. Andrew, you also said you're working for a job. You're looking for a job. What's your search been like, and what challenges are you having?
Pretty much the same. So I've been maybe 6 weeks now or so, and I started out, I think how most people do, exactly like Yassine said, apply for all the jobs, spray and pray, kind of looking for all the different ways to go about it. But some advice that I've been given from people on those coffee chats, and I've never had a single person say no. Everyone who I've ever asked at any level has always been like, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to chat. Yeah, at the beginning it was really rough. I mean, not so much rough mentally, but it was just like, oh, you're getting no response. But advice that I got was just keep getting better at everything. And it seems like a lot, but you've got to make your portfolio better. You've got to make your resume better. You've got to keep learning. You've got to keep posting. You've got to keep talking to people. You have to do everything consistently all the time. And you keep seeing holes in what you're doing. And as you talk to more people, people point things out. So up until recently, a few weeks ago, that's kind of how it was going. And then I really started crushing the projects and the portfolio and the resume and asking for a lot of help, putting out on LinkedIn. What do you think of my resume? What do you think of this project? I've got a local coding Slack, and the guys are amazing. I'll post a project and they'll come in, they'll tear it apart for me, and they'll show me what's good, what's bad. They'll help me out with that. But a few weeks ago, I just totally gave up on cold applying for work. I'm not doing it anymore. It's stressful, it's mentally taxing, it's not fun, and it's not getting me anywhere, especially as a junior. And funnily enough, the day after I did that, I started to have people reaching out to me with referrals. So it's like, all right, this is cool. And it's been consistent. Some of them have led to interviews. A lot of it is slower because it's internal stuff. So it's not like somebody we need right now. It's like, hey, my company might be hiring. So that's moving along, but that I've got more response and more success that way. Just showing up, just doing my best, and just getting better at everything. And the better I get, the more it's coming.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think for me, that cold apply can work if your resume, like the easy apply, I think people tend to do it because it's easy, and that spray and pray, it's easy. But how fruitful is it? And how much energy do we waste doing that? I think easy apply can work if you're confident your resume can edge out 90% of other candidates easy applying. But when you're trying to break into an industry, when you're trying to transition, chances are you're competing with people who have formal education in the tech world, other boot campers, other people who have possibly more projects than us, or you know, even like more attractive things on their resume, like even just the mention of certain technologies. For example, if you mention agile or you mention Git on a resume, and some people might not know that, but those two things can stand out. We're like, oh, okay, they know Git and source control. Okay, cool. That's like one less thing they need to learn. Okay, they know agile methodology. They already know our workflow. So knowing what to mention on those resumes can be critical. But if you're easy applying to companies that are bigger, I feel the resume would get drowned out. So I think that notion of having those coffee chats, talking to people, I think it's a much more fruitful approach. It has been for me too, even with a resume that, as I said, I mean, I mentioned my years of experience and things on the resume, but even so, that easy apply for me too, like, yeah, I'd get one or two responses here and there. But the amount I'd have to easy apply and also the amount of rejection emails in my inbox, it can be discouraging sometimes, the energy that goes into it. So when you talk about getting better and kind of learning everything, getting better, I agree, like being open to opportunity, being open to those coffee chats, just learning. I know some people I work with are transitioning teachers, and I tell them, take your teacher hat off. You're a student again. You are going into a new industry, so you're gonna have to learn a ton. So coming at it with the humility to ask for help too, as you mentioned, like, hey, I need help, or what do y'all think of this? Like, I want honest feedback. I think sometimes we can guard ourselves from that because we're scared of what the answer might be. We're scared of someone going, yeah, this is crap. But I think for the most part, when we put it out there, like, hey, I just need help and I want some constructive feedback, and would anyone be willing to take a look with me? And when somebody gives you feedback, say, okay, well, I appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much. Take what they say with a grain of salt and draw your own conclusions. Because I don't think, for example, I can give little tips and insights, but it's not going to work for everybody. So looking at those tips, looking at those insights, and trying to shape them into your own approach. If something's not working, change it up. So I think asking for help, something that you touched on, that's extremely important. Those coffee chats and just the notion of, hey, I'm just curious, I'm just trying to learn, and hey, here's a site I made, and how can I improve this? And then I think a lot of people there are people who don't want to be bothered, and you might get rejected and say, no, I don't really want to, I don't have time for that, etc. But if you keep asking, you meet people that say, okay, sure. Yeah, what's up?
I think those people are easy to filter out, though. You really just need to look for the people who are active on LinkedIn, just like you. I know if I had shot you a message and be like, hey, can we chat? I know you'd be like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys on there that are like that. And if they're not posting actively and they're not talking about certain things, you just know you're probably not going to get that response. If you kind of cold message somebody because you're trying to get into their company, it's going to really depend on how you go about it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I have cold messaged a lot of people at big tech. Just say, connect with them and just have a little. So one thing I do on LinkedIn is I connect with somebody and I personalize the invite. Say, hey, I'm a software engineer. I've been in the industry a while. I've been looking for my next opportunity. I'm just curious whether you could spend a bit of time with me. I just want to learn a bit about your company. I just want to learn a bit about what you do. A lot of people have responded to that with, if they accept the connection request, I know that they're open. So I'll shoot them an email and say, hey, thanks so much for accepting the connection request. Like, how you doing? And sometimes we chat about their kids and like we have a conversation. And then at some point too, we'll have a conversation, get to know them. Okay, cool. And then I'll go about my life. And maybe a week later, I might say, hey, how you doing today? I was curious, like, would you have a little bit of time? So approaching it with just the notion of relationship building, just the aspect of, hey, I just want to learn about what you do. And I want to learn for, I don't want to like, you don't have to say this, but coming from the mindset of, I'm not talking to you to get a job. I'm not talking to you to get a referral. I'm talking to you because I'm interested in hearing what you do. I want to learn a bit about more about the industry and what you do too. And like, what are your challenges? What do you like about your job, etc. Because that can filter out certain things as well, where for me, it has filtered out particular companies where these people are willing to jump on a call and in some cases say, like, hey, here are the challenges of my company. Here's the pros and the cons. And that can give us some insight into, are we going to be happy in this role? Are we going to be happy here? Are we going to, that can really help narrow down the search too. Yeah, I think for me, you could also create a bot to easy apply to as a project ID using Selenium. I mean, you could. I don't know if that's against LinkedIn terms or something like that, but but yeah. I really think the easy apply and the spray and pray, I'm generally not a fan of that. I think having a focused list of companies and actually going and reaching out to some of these people and having a chat with some of these people is a better way to approach it as far as I'm concerned anyways. But another thing I've heard too, and I've used this and it's something that I give as advice and take it or leave it, but connect with people who are doing what you want to do. So if you want to be a software engineer, or if you want to be an SDR, connect with people that are doing what you want to do. But then also connect with people who are leading the people that do what you want to do. So if you want to be a software dev or engineer, connecting with things like engineering managers. If you're interested in project managers, connecting with directors and project managers. If you're interested in design, connecting with designers and connecting with design leads. Connecting with people who do what you want to do and connecting with people who lead the people doing what you want to do. I think that opens up a lot of insight and opportunity as well. So doing that, and it's going to take time. I think sometimes managing expectations is something that needs to be done. I think as a bootcamp grad, trying to get your job in a month, I mean, is it possible? Absolutely. You're going to have to go really damn hard because there's a lot of competition, but having a realistic timeline and having the idea of managing those expectations, like what's my window here? 6 months, a year? Like when am I? Obviously, sometimes people are, well, as soon as possible, but managing those expectations so that you have a timeline for yourself. Like I'm going to apply to X companies per week. I'm going to craft cover letters for each of them. And if you're spray and pray applying to, let's say 30 companies in a week, that's 30 cover letters you have to write. That's so much energy that is gone. So narrowing that search down and really targeting not only like the industries you're passionate about and the companies you're passionate about, but company size as well. Smaller companies, they're probably going to be less competition. If you do the LinkedIn job filters and you filter based on experience level, so junior roles, entry level roles. If you filter on company size too, smaller companies, generally less competition. If you're applying to, let's say, Google or Facebook as your entry level job, they do have apprenticeships and programs there, but they are highly, highly competitive. So, and I'm not saying don't try. I mean, go for it. But just having that vision of where do you want to end up? Do you see yourself at in the Google apprenticeship programs? Is that what you want? Do you see yourself in a smaller company where you can learn and grow as well? I think there's different ways to approach this, and managing those expectations, I think, is extremely important. Yeah, any other questions? Just kind of looking through chat. Any questions about the tech industry, some of the roles, job searching in general, what it's like working inside tech as a dev, or some of the other roles? Anything I can answer for anybody? Okay, cool. So I think we're gonna head towards wrap up based on that. I just want to thank everybody for coming. This is actually my first time running this little event, so might have been a little bumpy at times, but I hope there's something of value here for you. Whether that was just learning a bit about the different roles, learning a bit about the job search, and learning a bit about each other too. And there's a few people in here that are in tech, have jobs in tech. A few of you are looking, a few of you are in sales, etc. But if you connect with each other, and you might not be able to directly help each other now, that's one thing that I think is important. We can't sometimes directly help somebody right away, but just making those connections and forming relationships and making those connections. And I think that's the right step, or a step in the right direction when it comes to job searching. The market and tech itself is extremely competitive, but when you have these conversations, you learn a lot, you grow a lot, and you start to make these connections, and then people will keep an eye on you. I know there are some people, some boot campers, every once in a while I go look at their profile and check out what they're doing, and they probably don't even know that, but other people in the industry do that as well. And then before too long, what starts happening is if you're writing about this stuff on LinkedIn, and not everybody enjoys doing that, but if you're writing and teaching the things you know, and for example, talking about the boot camps and your experience in them, there are boot campers that are starting, or people that want to go into boot camps that could benefit from that information. And in doing so, you form relationships. And I've seen it sometimes where somebody might, they work extremely hard, they might quote unquote get ahead of you, and then later on go, hey, my company's looking, you want to interview? I know we talked when I was getting out of the boot camp. So in doing that, you form these relationships, and whether they benefit you directly right away or not, or they may never benefit you, but when you do that, people remember it. They remember these conversations. They remember that you're willing to help out, and in doing so, I think that opens up a lot of opportunities. So yeah, thank you everybody for coming. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with everyone else as well, and feel free to help each other out. And if you're interested in that transition to tech community, please join, and there'll be more little things announced there as well, and on my LinkedIn. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and hope you enjoyed. Yeah, for sure. You're welcome, Andrew. You're welcome, Kiana.
Thank you, Scott.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Yassine. You too. Everybody have a good night. And yeah, feel free to DM me if you have any other questions, or if something pops in your mind in the future. Just shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. It's always open. I might not reply right away, but I do reply to every one of them eventually. So thanks. Bye.